Okay. As I said, no pressure there then. I will very quickly go through my presentation. Eugenie started off with a system that is in death. It's in decline. I'm old enough actually to remember social democracy and Fordism. This is the advantage of age. And it's interesting that one of the discussions that we have, people of my generation, is how we saw that transition to neoliberalism. And it feels very much the same. That we talk about the bad things, about, you said about people, they don't care about the workers, they don't care about you can sort of smell the decay of neoliberalism. And so I think one of the things we're trying to think about is actually what do we do next? Because the system is in crisis, and it's not just, the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, though as someone who likes volume 3 of Capital, I would say that's probably very crucial. But it's also, the Americans spend half the world's defence budget and they can't beat a bunch of Afghan hill bandits. You can look at the ecological crisis and so on and so forth. But I want to bring this down to something about how this little group has actually helped influence a particular political party in one country. I went last year, some of you might know this, I wrote with Andy Cameron 20-odd years ago this really famous pamphlet called The Californian Ideology. By accident, actually, it became famous, I always keep thinking. But I went and did it, though it was dismissed by the Silicon Valley elite 20 years ago. I was invited to basically do a 20th anniversary talk about it in Silicon Valley, which I thought was nice, finally my revenge. On the way back, I came to Platform Co-op's conference because the University of San Diego agreed to pay slightly extra so I could come and stay here. And I heard what was going on here. I thought it was really interesting. And it sort of stuck in my head. As you might know, in England, or Britain, I should say, we've had similar, as what's Oscar Wilde said about England and America, that we are divided by a common language. It's also a sort of common politics. We had our own Trump moment called Brexit, where the Tory voter and a discontented part of what would be normally the left vote just went up yours and did something ridiculous. It's great. We can now say we're no longer the most stupid electorate in the world. That's quite gratifying. So it was used, though. One of the reasons why Brexit happened is because we did have our own equivalent of Bernie Sanders, a guy called Jeremy Corbyn, who actually did successfully become leader of the Labour Party, much to the horror of the equivalent of the Clintons, which is the Blairites. It's great. They're called the Blairites. Here is a faction of a party that names itself after a war criminal. And if you think it's just us calling them that, is actually, I wasn't at Labour Party conference this year, but I gather at their faction meeting called Progress, they were all going, Tony, Tony, Tony. So this is not like we're monstering them. This is what they think they are. Okay, so one of the reasons the Brexit camp lost is because the Blairites and the Remain Tories were actually running the campaign, and though Jeremy toured the country arguing for Remain and reform through Yanis Varoufakis' DM25 position, they just kept him off the media. And I always wondered, I thought this is really odd, if you really want to get referendum, this key group, particularly in the north of England, winning them over, and they didn't do that. And the reason was that they were about to launch a coup. That we'd won this one person, one vote election. Funnily enough, they'd actually installed the one vote, one member on the assumption that the Labour Party membership was very right wing. They got a bit of a shock when they discovered it wasn't. So we got in, and so they then launched another attempt. Basically, they organised this attempt to oust Jeremy from the leadership. And one of the interesting things is, so I wrote this article, I was just interested in the way that if it had been done 20 years earlier, it would have succeeded. It was organised, allegedly, I don't know whether this is actually true, by a PR company run by Tony Blair's press secretary, a guy called Alistair Campbell. Again, this is allegations from this wonderful website, The Canary. But it was really well organised. They obviously had a media grid, they had shadow cabinet ministers resigning on the hour with a big gap during the England-Iceland match. They had all the mainstream media were interviews lined up. All the key things of the left, the New Statesman, the Guardian, the BBC, were all just, get rid of him, this man is terrible. But actually it failed. And right early on, I actually wrote this article for Open Democracy, which is a sort of leftist website, saying that what's interesting is that both Jeremy's election and this re-election campaign is because people were using digital networks. And even these commercial platforms like Facebook and Twitter actually allowed people to first discover there are lots of other people who thought like them. We aren't just a small group of lefties, but actually we are the Labour Party. And particularly as hundreds of thousands of people started joining the Labour Party, we found there were an awful lot of us in the country. And it failed. We just had the second election, and the great thing is, even though they excluded 120,000 recent members from the ballot, and 10,000 people, including myself, were suspended because we were overtly Corbynista. So they were trying really desperately, in true Debbie Wasserman Schultz fashion, to rig the election. They failed. In fact, we got an increased majority. Okay, so part of this campaign I was involved with. I said, this is the reason they tried to throw me out. A great honour, actually. They've never sent me actually, the real thing is they sent me a PDF saying, you have been suspended. And then my lawyer friend of mine said, wait till they send you the hard copy. And I thought, oh, great, I'll wait for it. And I've been waiting ever since because I want to frame it and put it on my wall as a great badge of honour, to be honest. Okay, so a friend of mine I worked with in the 1980s in the Greater London Council, which is the sort of equivalent of Barcelona then. He was the deputy leader. We worked on a community radio project together, is now the shadow finance minister. This is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, we were so important in the Labour Party that in Tony Blair's autobiography called A Journey, I think he wanted to call it The Journey from to £130 million and hopefully to The Hague. We're not in it. There's no John McDonnell and there is no Jeremy Corbyn in it. And in Jonathan Powell, as his chief of staff, wrote a wonderful book of idiocy called The New Machiavelli, which he has obviously never read Machiavelli. I think he just got some research student to intern to get the quotes for him. It says campaign group, which is the MPs, and on an assorted eccentrics. That's us. And now we're in charge. I just think that the first election must have almost given us a heart attack. There's a great GQ interview. If you read it, it's hilarious. The pain that we've given that man is so good. Okay, so John is now the shadow chancellor, and because I sent him a copy of this article before it came out, and he said, well, why don't you write us a Digital Democracy Manifesto? You're involved with this group called Cyber Salon, been having meetings in London for, years and years. I've been involved in the internet stuff for ages. So why don't you do that? So we had a hackathon, we crowdsourced it, and we did this. So it's online, it's on the link, have a look at it. It's got, it's all the basic stuff, broadband for all, improving, with no data caps, crucially, community media freedom, using it in education system, and, platform cooperatives. We wrote it in. You invite me to the conference. Not ism, I hasten to say, but we're actually going to do it. It's not an ideology, it's a practice. Some other things which actually were covered earlier, this idea of owning your own data, what all these programming for everybody, obvious things. The People Charter for Digital Liberties, again, pretty obvious. And then this stuff, massive multi-person online deliberation. Okay, I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute, but what the most wonderful thing is, you always know you're being successful when you get monstered by the Murdoch press. And this is the best one. This is a game called Comrade Cobra about the Stalinist purges, so they think I'm a Stalinist. The mother of my son is Latvian, and she says, I am the most un-Stalinist person she's ever met in her life. Yeah, but you're successful. If you're not trolled by the bourgeois media, you're no one. Okay, so partly, I just want to quickly explain, partly the inspiration for this comes, and I want to talk just to say why platform co-ops isn't just a nice idea or just a marginal part of what we're thinking about. So back in the 1980s, when we were working together on community radio, this is the sort of thing that we thought about using community radio and Minitel. Those of you know from before America had the internet, there was this which then seemed incredibly futuristic data computer network which you could use in front. Now, it's a bit like, I don't know, IRC or something, or message boards. I mean, it was pretty, but we thought this was the future. We were going to build the electronic agora. We were going to go beyond representative democracy. I mean, obviously, it was a local council. It had people in it as councillors, but even in the 1980s, it was realised that we couldn't actually ourselves, just a group of councillors and the people who supported them behind it, actually run the system. So this is a 1979 pamphlet called In and Against the State. This is a tactical manual of the GLC. John McDonnell likes to say the good example of this is that in the 1980s, when they got elected, this is 82, I think it was, something like that, anyway, around that period, 81, 82, is that they didn't have any lesbian or gay councillors. They knew homophobia was wrong, so they rang up Gay Switchboard and say, what should we do? Let's organise public meetings. Yeah? We got, again, trolled for respecting our gay brothers and lesbian sisters. 30 years later, the Conservative Party is passing gay marriage laws. Yeah? So it shows that if you come in and ask people to help you devise policy, this will actually mean that you can create not only more intelligent policies, but actually, in a way, build the future in the present. So for us, yes, I'm finishing now, right? For us, so co-ops are partly, obviously, an economic policy. They're also a way that we want to actually redesign politics. If you think about bourgeois society, it's based on the split between the state and civil society. And one of the reasons why neoliberalism has been so successful is actually, if you have too much democracy in the state, what's happened in the last 100 years is that, this state was founded, of course, America was founded by slave owners. I always love this place. You come here and the currency has slave owners on it. Yeah, just in case you didn't know, it was an oligarchy. So it's an oligarchy. Capitalism is based around an oligarchy. It's had this problem, that especially since the Second World War, is that it's become a political democracy, so power has to be shifted from the democratic sphere of the state into the private sector, where it's a tyranny. So partly, if we want to heal this split, to actually cure a lot of these problems, we have to democratise. So both in and against the state, making the state actually a democracy. I said the one thing about if you look at the history of left-wing government, it's the iron law of oligarchy. I talk about this in the first article. The problem is you have a small group of insiders, but they don't actually know how to run anything, actually. And they start doing stupid things like invading Iraq and bailing out the banks, because they don't know any better. They just go along with it. And so we need to bring people in to get the collective wisdom of people to actually make better policy. So one of the things that we want to work on at the moment, particularly because we've got groups like Momentum, which is the sort of left-wing pressure group within the Labour Party, is to start actually getting the membership of the Labour Party to start writing policies and to recruit people into the Labour Party to do that. We now have 600,000 members. This is the biggest political party in Europe. Our aim is to have at least 1 million. And unlike Podemos or Syriza, the key difference with Labour Party is it came out of the trade union movement. And so we have 6.5 million trade unions. And also, let's just remember, the Labour Party came out of the cooperative movement. So we have 3 wings of the party, the 3 wings of the Labour movement: the political party, the trade unions, and the cooperative. So in many ways, what we want to do is the Labour Party went through a long decline, like lots of social democratic left of centre parties, got taken over by technocrats. They declared it was new times. We didn't have to bother about socialism anymore. Well, we're going to say, no, that's over. What we want to do in some ways, as people have said here, go back to the wisdom of pre-1945 Second International Social Democracy and say what we want to do is build the cooperative commonwealth to actually move in and against the state, but also in and against civil society, to heal the division between them and to create a truly human civilization. Thank you.
Marx